Good morning, distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, and fellow attendees. It is a great honor to welcome you all back to the conference. This panel discussion will be on local perspectives in engaging with international economic law. Our panelists will share their thoughts, perspectives, and real world applications, and of course, we encourage you to engage with them through questions and dialogue. Let me welcome our esteemed panelists. Panel Chair, Professor Nalin Abesekara is the Dean of the Faculty of Management Studies at the Open University of Sri Lanka and a Senior Lecturer in Strategic Management and Marketing. Nalin Abesekara, a graduate of the University of Sri Jeyachandran, he holds a BSc in Marketing Special and is a Chartered Marketer and a member of the Sri Lankan Institute of Marketing. Professor Nalin Abesekara completed his PhD in University of Colombo in the year 2013 in Leadership and Marketing. Professor Abesekara recognized as Outstanding Asian Education in 2018 by Asian Research Organization. He has received numerous accolades, including 3 gold medals for strategic management, marketing management, and dissertation from the University of Colombo. Professor Nalin Abesekara served as chairperson of the first International Conference on Management and Entrepreneurship 2022. Our other panel members, Mr. Withanawasam, founder, chairman, and CEO, TIIKM. Mr. Harinda Mahakumara, chairman, Hela Coco Energy. Mr. Nilantha Kumara, export manager, Ruhunu Products Private Limited. Ms. Amira Ghafoor, founder and CEO, Northwood Consulting. Mr. Abitharani Jeyachandran, co-founder and CEO, SPM Technologies. Let's make this session an interactive, thought-provoking exchange of ideas. Professor Nalin Abesekara, I kindly invite you to proceed with the panel.
The local perspectives in engaging with international economic law. Now, I am actually coming from the management and strategic management background. For a country, whatever the time we discuss about the strategies for the country for the future, we need to always concern about the vision with all these strategic management plan. Even by looking at the country in context of South Asian, Sri Lanka, we have many challenges. And by considering the biodiversity of the country and all, there are certain aspects we have to take into consideration. By looking at Sri Lanka in the industry and by looking at the SME sector, the contribution of the SME sector just by looking at the GDP is around 52%. And even the employment sector also, SME sector contribution around 48%. In order to govern the country, the contribution of the private sector, even the public sector and all, we considered as important. In that particular perspective, we are talking about this local perspective in engaging with international economic law, where always we have to concern about international trade, promote foreign direct investment, protect intellectual property and foster economic cooperation. So in that scenario, there are many challenges like access to international market, trade agreement, intellectual property rights, and foreign direct investment. By looking at certain aspects, I think this particular SAIELN 2024, the conference considered as really important for the country to understand certain best practices of other countries and see how we can move forward, maybe for year 2040 or maybe for year 2050. So I warmly welcome all the panelists. Then I will ask the question from Amira. So just by looking at your expertise, what are the key challenges faced by Sri Lanka tech businesses in complying with international economic law, such as data security and cross-border regulations?
Thanks, Professor. Good morning to all of you. And I have to be thankful for Professor for directing his first question of the panel to a lady. So ladies first. I'm honored to be on the panel as well. Taking on your question, Professor, on the challenges, I come from a legal and a tech background. My education is in legal, but I run a technology business. We're one of the very few in Sri Lanka running data and AI in Sri Lanka. In terms of, and about 60% of the services we offer is to export markets, including the US, UK, and Australia. And from personal experience, some of the biggest and toughest challenges that we as a medium business, I wouldn't call ourselves small anymore, we have grown. As a medium business, some of the biggest challenges we face, first is data security, right? So you have different data security frameworks starting from the GDPR, you have the HIPAA compliance framework in the US, then you have Australia with its own data security regulatory frameworks. So one of the biggest challenges for any business, a business of any scale, small, medium or large, regardless, is data security. How are you going to store your the confidential data of your customers and the customers of your customers? How is it stored? How is it transferred? All of this is very important. And if you do not get your data security framework in order, you have to say goodbye to the business, because that's definitely on the cards. The second biggest, I would say, challenge that we have is actually data localization. So for instance, Australia, what we really understood with the Australian market is that a lot of the data that we work with, or rather the solutions that we create for the Australian market, a lot of their data needs to be, pretty much all data needs to be hosted on a server in Australia. Now that's a very specific requirement. As far as I know, even China has the same requirement, and also India. I think some of our Indian counterparts can also probably confirm that as well. But in Australia, you need to have a completely different server to host your data. So that's another challenge, data localization. And then of course the third challenge is Professor. Sri Lanka is known for its tech solutions. We have an amazing talent pool, even better than India maybe. And also, a lot of the Western countries really love to work with us. We have all of that, but then, you sell a product and then you have the local tax that you need to pay. And taxation again is very different. If you have a US entity, if you have a non-US foreign entity registered in the US, then there is a tax threshold, all of this. So I think there is no uniformity across all of these three challenges, which is the hardest to figure out. So a lot of how we have done, how we have understood all of these challenges is actually by putting ourselves out there. There was really no one to tell us, here, if you're going into the UK market, this is how you got to deal with it. If you're going into the US market, this is how you got to deal with it. No, it's, why don't you jump in the deep end and figure it out yourself? So I think mitigating that would be through, sort of workshops where you can get the SMEs to one place and tell them, this is how you approach your data security framework if you are entering this market or that market. And sort of bring uniformity to all of these regulations, give them that knowledge. And also, some of these regulations are not easy, and they're not cheap either. They're not very cost effective. So that also keeps a lot of good Sri Lankan tech companies from going overseas because of the cost factor. So those are, in summary, professors, those are some of the challenges that we face.
Yeah, thank you. And also, just by looking at these sort of tech businesses and all, what about the attitude and all towards to these different perspective of technology? I'm asking a kind of a different question.
Yes. When you say you're working in AI, everyone's like, oh my God. Especially, I'm sure a lot of the academics in this room, they have a massive, AI today has a negative connotation, right? And I do a lot of AI work in the local industry, and I see how much the clients and the companies that we work with gain out of AI. I see how their labor costs go down, their efficiency increases, all of this. So when I do meet someone who says, AI is dangerous, keep out of it, I'm like, no, it's, there is also really good. So we have to tackle different attitudes, but that is also a part of the game. Like, how do you maneuver it? How do you go around it? That's something that we enjoy as well.
Yeah, yes, thank you. And even there can be kind of a gender perspective attitude towards AI, male versus female. We can have a separate study. Right, thank you very much.
Yes,
thank you. Then Mr. Oshadee Withanawasam, by looking at your experience in the industry and organization, conferences and all, so what are the key challenges faced by Sri Lankan startups and SME? Just by looking at scaling up their businesses in international market. As an exporter, what sort of challenges you always encountered?
Thank you very much, Professor, for inviting me to meet this panel. So, looking at the topic and blending it with my experience, I am coming from a SME background. So, we had a very tough time for the last 10 years, especially when we comparing Sri Lanka with the other part of the world. We have faced many issues. So, regardless of all these issues, Sri Lankan SME sector now contributing 52% to Sri Lankan GDP, and it's cover 45% of Sri Lankan employment. And when we consider in the overall Sri Lankan business community, 75% are representing by SMEs. So I think, especially when we are talking a subject like international law exports, I think SME sector, the contribution and the laws and regulation imposed on the export and on SME, I think it's really important. So that will, I think, SME can make a country or break a country. So that's how it is now in the current context. So I'm into export. So I'm working with a lot of international vendors, since I am into organizing international conferences as my business. So, and I am into tourism. So we always connected with many laws. So in Sri Lanka, sadly, when it's come to our international law perspective, I mean, the law is there, but the issue is how we going to practice it, and the support we are getting from the regulations, laws, procedures and policies. So I know how much we are, especially we are having a lot of issues with clearance, customs issues. And when we are, even if we as a SME, if we want to get some service or else offer some service, we have to get many clearance, procedures, regulations, documentations. So these things, sometimes for a big company, these things not make a big fuss. For them, it's easy for them. But for a SME, that make a huge barrier for them to access international market. So I think we need a proper regulations and a set of laws and procedures to easier this process. Then the second thing, this SME sector facing the biggest issue is the protection we are having for our new products, especially patents. There were many incidents, my friends, what they faces once now this venture capitalizing process. So once we go and pitch it out for some time for an investor, or sometime we are apply for a patent. What happens sometime next day, we will lose our, our original idea. Someone else will steal it. So in Sri Lanka, we honestly don't have a proper framework. Recently, like a week back, I attended a convention in Bangalore. So Bangalore is now one of the booming city especially for IT. So their patent process and the security and the guarantee given by the government for the SMEs, you apply it, we will protect you. I think this is a high time for us to think about how we can protect our original ideas. So we have to think about it, and we have to come, put an effort and time on this. Not only this, then the other thing, this foreign exchange regulations, and especially for a locals like SME like us, is still in Sri Lanka, we are not allowed to do we don't have any online payment method in Sri Lanka. We don't have PayPal. We don't have any other payment method. But when we compare in the world, especially IT section, IT industry, without having a proper payment method to connect with international buyers. It's really difficult for us to, perform on our job. So sadly, still, I think many discussions going on for the last, I think, many years to give freedom on on this financial payments and financial processes. But unfortunately, we are like isolated country when it's come to payment related rules and regulation. So I think it's a high time for us to again think if we really want Sri Lanka to come forward with our economy, especially for if we want to push our SMEs, startups to perform better and get the economy to the next level. Then other thing, one final thing, standard and compliances. So that is again something I think we really need to discuss, and the government, policymakers, they should, I'm not saying should, they must support it with a proper framework. It's still in Sri Lanka, most of, even a lot of SMEs, they are not really aware about international law. They are not really aware about, not international law. I think even with the local laws and regulation, what are the difficulties, what are the barriers they are having. So without knowing all these, frameworks, still most of our Sri Lankans, especially when we are trying to approach international market, now especially in Europe and Australian region, American region, there are many regulations and policies with data protection, cookies and everything. So as marketeers, sometime when we are approaching international markets, sometimes suddenly we get an email saying you breached some copyrights and pay $1,500. The reason is not that email or what that person has done. The reason, sometimes that person is totally unaware of the situation. So without giving that proper education, I think we must starting from there. Law and regulation, that's starting. I must know the law to practice it, right? So I think that is something come to my mind especially. So if we really want to connect us with the international market, if we want to connect us with international community, I think educating locals about not only international law, but even about the local law, I think that is must. So it has to come from the education, not at the university level. I think even from the ground level. So this is my perspective. Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Oshadee, for the insight and all, basically I think you mentioned about your experience at Bangalore, some best practices. We have our Indian friends, maybe the best practices, and we can inculcate into Sri Lankan context. And more importantly, you discuss about the SME sector. Sometimes there are certain laws, regulations are like kind of a thing being not properly articulated, because in Sri Lankan context, the 70% of the SME talk two different languages, Sinhala or Tamil, but we always try to discuss everything with one language called English. So there should be a kind of a proper way to promote this, whatever the rules and regulations in their mother tongue. Because even the UNESCO and all, they say the creativity and imagination will come from your mother language. So these are the perspectives. Even I think the international economic law also, certain aspects, if we can have certain things in Sinhala or Tamil language, maybe one of the challenge for our SAIELN organizers and all, it might actually propagate the idea among the SME sector. That also will add some value. Thank you again, Oshadee, for your insights and all. Then we have Ms. Abitharani Jeyachandran. So how can social enterprises, I think that is one of the area, very interesting area. The social enterprises in Sri Lanka follow international economic laws and promote sustainability.
So, as the co-founder of SPM Eco, so what we are doing in SPM Eco is like, in Sri Lanka, plastic waste management is a huge problem. Like there's a collision in dump yards because of low density plastic mixed with these garbages. So like as a social enterprise, what we are doing is plastic upcycling using plastic upcycling machines like shredder and things. Like I have seen that local businesses can make huge impact using kind of these things. So actually there's a law called extended producer responsibility. So many foreign countries has this law called extended producer responsibility. Is so like companies who are producing plastics has the responsibility to recycle it or reuse it or collect and remove it properly. So but even though this law is in foreign countries, but in Sri Lanka this law has not implemented yet. But even though that law is not in Sri Lanka, but as a social enterprise, we can start working on that. And also in the foreign countries, there's a system called plastic credit system. Like it's similar to carbon credit system. Like what does carbon credit system, how it works is, normally foreign countries, there are companies emits carbons. So to tackle that, they invest in projects like planting trees. So likewise, we can implement plastic credit system. Like companies who produces plastic can invest to reuse plastics. So likewise, we can follow plastic credit system, and to even foreign markets, we can sell those plastics. Through that, we can to our country. And also, there's another thing, economy. Reusing plastics or reuse the waste rather than throwing it away. So we can follow that rules as well. Like we don't need to wait to implement that law in Sri Lanka, but we can start to follow those rules. So if we follow these rules, so we can align with foreign laws. So we don't need to worry about economically or anything. We can start to sell our products to foreigners, like by following those laws. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting, because now in the world we discuss about the sustainable development goals, then triple bottom line approach, people, profit and planet, and you discuss about the social enterprises and how the international economic laws will always promote the particular sustainability. Thank you very much for the insight. Then Mr. Nilantha Kumara, just by looking at the particular different context of trade disputes and how you can deal in with those disputes without escalating to litigation.
Good morning. Thank you. So I'm going to discuss about the practical aspects of these things. Today's globalized world, you can't survive without dealing with your foreign suppliers and buyers. When you are dealing with those foreign suppliers and buyers, they belongs to different cultures, and they have different languages, and they have different laws, and they have different procedures which you are not aware. So when you are dealing with those people, there is a high possibility to getting into disputes. You can't 100% avoid it, but you can mitigate, you can reduce the possibility of getting into those disputes. How you are going to do that? What is the impact of SMEs of that? Because if you are on a dispute, it is very costly as well as time consuming for you to get it challenged. For SME sector, it is not affordable at all. So therefore, you have to align your processes to mitigate the getting into disputes or possibilities. So then you have to understand root causes and how you are going to reduce that. First thing, when you are dealing with a overseas partner, you have to select proper partner. You have to do thorough check over your business partner. Unless other than you have to get certain precautions to prevent you in the risk. So you can check their financial background, you can check references, you can call chambers, and there are so many methods which you can do in today's world. So once you select the proper business partner, then you should establish very effective two-way communication mechanism in between you and your business partner. So we'll take small example. You are a beverage manufacturer and you want to send container of consignment to USA. So you receive an inquiry from USA. Are you going to immediately supply that? No. You have to do some background check. You have to do your homework and select your customer. So then once you select the customer, you have to effectively communicate your product specification, what are the terms and conditions, what is the payment term, what is the delivery term, how you are going to pack it, and what are the labels you are going to put, because in USA there are different label regulations. You have to adherence to their documentation requirements. Once you ship your consignment, you can't do any changes. So let's say you ship your consignment, then what would happen? You are sending your documents to customer. In this case, you have mentioned 1 year shelf life period on this consignment. How you are going to print it in the label is 1st December 2025. You are writing it 01/12/2025. Once you send the documents, your buyer said, hey, you have shipped expired goods. I'm not going to pay you. I'm not going to accept the consignment. How that can happen then? In USA, how they are reading date format is they are taking first 2 digits as the month. In Sri Lanka and the European countries, you take first 2 digits as the date. Then there is a dispute. So if you have effectively communicate that into your customer, you can definitely avoid this kind of situations. So therefore, even if there is no legal agreement between you and your customer, you can include those information into your pro forma invoice, which is the basic agreement between you and your buyer in case if you don't have an agreement with him. So because there is offer and acceptance is there in the pro forma invoice. So let's say in this case you don't get LC payment or advance payment. You are going to DP or DA. DP means documents against payment, DA means documents against acceptance payments, or else open account payment. So your buyer can refuse to pay you. What you are going to do now? Are you going to get legal actions against him? As a SME, can you do that? No, you can't do that. You can't afford for the cost of legal fees. So therefore, it is advisable for you to collect some portion of percentage of advance payment when you are going into DA or DP payment terms, because then from buyer's end, then he has some commitment over your consignment. Still, there are insurance policies which you have to obtain. In SME sector, you are normally taking only the marine insurance. That is not sufficient. I think other insurance policies, some of the SMEs even don't aware. So such as good in transit insurance, which you have to cover your consignment from your warehouse to port of loading, then from port of loading to customer's warehouse marine insurance policy. And other important thing is you have to get product liability insurance, because in case if US consumer sue against you, take legal action or ask for compensation, how you are going to compensate? Because as SME sector in Sri Lanka, you are not affordable for that kind of a fine or fee. So therefore, it is very important for you to focus over those things. Not only that, you can obtain your credit insurance policy from Sri Lanka Export Credit Insurance Corporation, which you can save in this case, which you can safeguard your payment from the buyer. The next thing, if you have an agreement or not, in a dispute, you have to definitely negotiate your customer, your buyer. You can compensate partially, even though you don't have, you haven't done any mistake, but we need to protect the market. So in that aspect, you have to positively engage your customer or business partner to resolve the problem. And also, if you have agreement, you can go for arbitration or mediation processes as well. So, at last, I would like to ask Professor whether if you all can work with EDP to establish some kind of protocol, some kind of mechanism to help SME sector in a kind of a dispute, how they are going to deal, how they are going to manage these kind of disputes effectively in terms of legal aspects and all, because that will be very beneficial for SME sector to going up to the next stage. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nilantha. I think that particular suggestion can be considered as really important. Even if you taken this particular context of international economic law, where we discuss about certain aspects of trade law, investment law, intellectual property and all, but I think SME sector, the trade law can be considered as one of the very important things. Thank you very much.
And there is no institution in Sri Lanka for the SME sector to get aware about the trade law and all. And if you are on dispute, they are in very trouble because they are not, it's not affordable for them to the cost of legal fees and all.
Yeah, and even we have our Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences comes under that, the Department of Law. So you maybe as a CSR activity or something aligned with the SME sector, we can have a collaborative work. Thanks for that particular idea.
Thank you.
Yes, and also we are going to bring a different flavor for the panel discussion. So as I clearly mentioned, in Sri Lankan context, 70 to 80% of the people, they only articulate Sinhala or Tamil. Now I am going to ask one question in one of the national languages, Sri Lanka Sinhala, from Mr. Harinda Mahakumara. So the question actually I am asking from him about, like now we are talking about this international economic law and all. So what sort of, like for the SME sector, what are the challenges? Harinda, SME sector එකේ මොන වගේ challenges ද තියෙන්නේ? ඒ කියන්නේ especially අපි export business එක වගේ එකට ගියත්.
ඔය ඇත්තම කියනවා නම් කුඩා පරිමාණ ව්‍යවසායකයෙක් වශයෙන් සහ අපනනකරුවෙක් වශයෙන් දෙකකින් තියෙනවා සාතිශය බහුතරයක්. ඒකෙදි කියන්න ඕනේ දැනුවම අධිකම. විශේෂයෙන් කුඩා පරිමාණ ව්‍යවසායකයන්ට තමන්ගේ නිෂ්පාදනය කොහොමද අපනයනය කරන්නේ. ඒකෙදි ඒක මොන වගේ තත්ත්වයක තිබිය යුතුද කියන දැනුම නැහැ. ඒ දැනුම අධිකම ලොකුම ගැටලුව. දැන් අපි වගේ අය දැනුම හොයාගෙන ඒක ගවේෂණය කරලා තමයි ඒ අභියෝගයන් ජයගන්නේ. දැන් මම මගේ රටවල් නමකට අපනයනය කරනවා. ඒක කරාට ඒකෙදි සෑහෙන බාධාවක්. මම හිතන්න බැරි තරම් බාධාවල් ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන මොකද දැනුම පිළිබඳව ගැන ලංකාවේ වගේ රටක ඒ පිළිබඳව දැනුම දෙන ස්ථාන සහ දැනුම ගන්න ස්ථානයක් නැහැ. එතකොට අනිත් ගැටලුව තමයි විශේෂයෙන් කුඩා පරිමාණ හෝ මධ්‍ය පරිමාණ අපනයනකරුවෙක් වීමේදී ඔවුන්ට ඇති වෙනවා තමන්ගේ බුද්ධිමය දේවල් පිළිබඳ ගැටලුවක්. තමන්ගේ ඒ කියන්නේ තමන්ගේ රහස්‍යභාවය ආරක්ෂා කරගන්න කොහොමද රහස්‍යභාවය ආරක්ෂා කරන්නේ? දැන් මම ගත්තාම මම තමයි ලංකාවේ මුලින්ම මේ බෙවරේජ් කෑන් සීමරක නිර්මාණය කරේ. ඒතකොට ඒකෙදි මට ඒකට මම පේටන්ට් එකවත් ගන්න දාන්නේ නැහැ. හේතුව මම දන්නවා නීතිමය බලංගු ගැටලුවක් ඇති වෙනවා කියන එක. එහෙම වුණොත් ඒක මගේ තාක්ෂණය පිට යනවා. ඒතකොට මම තැඹිලි වතුර සහ තවත් බෙවරේජ් වර්ග කිසිම රසායන ද්‍රව්‍යයක් නැතුව නිෂ්පාදනය කරනවා. දැන් මේකෙදි මට ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් සර්ටිෆිකේෂන්ස් ගන්න විදියක් නැහැ, බයයි. එන කන්සල්ටන්ට් මගේ සම්පූර්ණ රහස්‍යභාවය දෙන්න වෙනවා. ඒතකොට මේවා ආරක්ෂා කරගන්න ක්‍රමයක් නැහැ. ඒක කොහොමද අපි එන පැමිණෙන පුද්ගලයෝ විශ්වාස කරන්නේ? ඒකට ජාත්‍යන්තරවත් එක්ක බැඳුණු නීතියක් සම්පාදනය විය යුතුයි. විශේෂයෙන් ආසියානු රටවල ඒක තියෙනවා. ලංකාවේ, ඉන්දියාව සහ බංග්ලාදේශ, පාකිස්තාන වගේ රටවල මේ ගැටලු ලොකුට තියෙන කුඩා පරිමාණ ව්‍යවසායකයන්ගේ දැනුම සාමාන්‍ය කියන මංකොල කරනවා. ඒ දැනුම හොරකම් කරගෙන සමහර මගේ දෙක තරහ වෙන කන්නේ යම් විශාල පරිමාණ ව්‍යවසායකයෝ ඒක උපයෝග කරගන්න අවසානයේදී අර ශුද්ධ පරිමාණ ව්‍යවසායකයන්ට මුකුත්ම නැති වෙන අවස්ථා ඇති වෙනවා මහාචාර්යතුමා. ඉතින් මේ වගේ ගැටලු. එතකොට දැන් බුද්ධිමය දේවල් බලන්න තිබ්බත් අපි අපේ රහස්‍යභාවයේ සියලු දේවල් ඒ තාක්ෂණය අපි අදාළ ආයතනට දෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒ දුන්නට පස්සේ එතනින් එහා ඒකට අත්දිනකටම ඇත්තම සැක සංකාවක් තියෙනවා. ඉතින් මම පෞද්ගලිකව මම ගත්තා මගේ කිසිම යන්ත්‍රයක හෝ මොනව නිෂ්පාදනයක හෝ රහස්‍යභාවය යන්න නිසා මම කිසිම දෙයක් මේ පේටන්ට් එක ගන්න ඉදිරිපත් කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඉතින් ඒක යම් ප්‍රමාණික ආවරණයක් වුණාට ඒ ආවරණය සම්පූර්ණව ලැබෙන්නේ නැහැ අදාළ පුද්ගලයාට. ඉතින් මේ රහස්‍යභාවය පිළිබඳ අනිත් ගැටලුව අපනයනයේදී කුඩා පරිමාණ ව්‍යවසායකයන්ට දැනුම් අධිකම කිව්වේ ඔවුන්ගේ නිෂ්පාදන මොන වගේ ස්ථානයක තිබිය යුතුද කියන දැනුම් නැහැ. අනිත් ගැටලුව තමයි දැන් සාමාන්‍ය මූල්‍යමය ගැටලු අපි කියන්නේ letter of credit LC වගේ දේක් ඕපන් කරාම ඒක ඕපන් කරන්නේ කොහොමද කියලා ලැබෙන නීතිමය ආවරණය කොහොමද කියලා උන් දන්නේ නැහැ. මේක මේ රටේ මම හිතනවා 52.5කට වඩා සුළු පරිමාණ ව්‍යවසායකයෝ ඉන්නේ. එහෙම දැන් ලංකාව ගත්ත එහෙම රටක ඔවුන් කොහොමද ගොඩනගන්නේ ඔවුන් කොහොමද අපනයනකරු බවට පත් කරන්නේ එතකොට අපනයන වෙළඳපොලේ මොන වගේ දේවල් ප්‍රවේශයේදී මොන වගේ දේවල්ද උන්ට ඉටු යුතු කියන දේ විශේෂයෙන් මගේ රටේ නැහැ. ඒක නැතිවීම ලොකු අඩුපාඩුවක්. මොකද මේ දැනුම ලබා දෙන අඩුම ගානේ රාජ්‍ය මැදිහත් වීමෙන් ඒ වගේ දැනුම ලබා යදී ආයතනයක් නිර්මාණය විය යුතුයි. අනිත් ගැටලුව එන්නේ ඒක තමයි ඔවුන් කළමනාකරණය කිරීමේ ලොකු ගැටලුවක් තියෙනවා මහාචාර්යතුමා. මොකද හේතුව මේ ලංකාවේ සෑහෙන විශාල ධර්ම සාහිත්‍ය පුද්ගලයන් අප නොදන්න ඔවුන්ගේ යන්ත්‍ර සූත්‍ර සිට සියල්ලම නිෂ්පාදනය කරන අය ඉන්නවා. ඉතින් ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ තැන හොයාගන්න කිසිම පහසුකමක් නැහැ. මේක මම මගේ රට හුඟක්ම සුන්දර රට මහ වටින රටක්. හැබැයි ගැටලුවක් තියෙනවා මේකට අවශ්‍ය දේවල් මේ සුළු පරිමාණ ව්‍යවසායකයා ගොඩනගන්න ක්‍රමවේදයක් නැහැ. ඔහුගේ දළදේශීය නිෂ්පාදනයේ 52% වඩා ප්‍රමාණ ආවරණය වුණාට මහා පරිමාණ ව්‍යවසායක තමයි වෙලාවෙම අගන්නේ බැංකු පද්ධතියේ ඉඳලා එහෙම නැත්නම් මොනවන්මු තාක්ෂණයේ පැත්තේ මොනවම දෙයක් ලැබෙනවා නම් ඒ සාතිශය බහුතරයක් අසාධාරණ ලක් වෙනවා සුළු පරිමාණ ව්‍යවසායකයා ඔවුන්ගේ දැනුම මදිකම සහ ඔවුන් එතෙන්ට උපයෝග කරන නොගැනීම සහ නීතිමය ආවරණය නොමැතිවීම මේක තමයි මම දකින්නේ.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. I think I first should introduce Mr. Harinda Mahakumara. He is one of the SME. He is representing the SME sector, and more importantly, he produces his own particular brand, fruit juice brand in Sri Lankan context, doing a business in a small scale. Where in his discussion actually elaborated certain very important things. I think these things are really imperative for us to have a kind of a discussion, because certain things like access to international market, then again intellectual property rights. I think Mr. Oshadee also discussed about the intellectual property rights, and he discussed about some regulatory challenges. So these are the aspects I think we can take into consideration, comes under the international economic law as well. Thank you very much. And also we have only 10 minutes remaining. Because of that we have to have a kind of a management. Time management is one of the very, very important thing. Shall I ask one specific question?
Sure.
Where now Amira, so how can tech entrepreneurs identify and monetize opportunities in areas like data compliance, then we discuss about cyber security or legal tech to address these barriers?
So Professor, I think that's a very good question, and it's also generally how entrepreneurs look at problems is, if there is a problem, there has to be a solution, and if you find the solution, then you monetize it. So in the best interest of time, I'll keep it very simple, right? So we do have, and I think Oshadee also touched on this, a lot of people in business, and especially tech businesses, they have to work with different data security, data protocols across different regions. One way that a business could monetize that is to be able to bring all of it under a consulting service, consult small and medium enterprises on how to approach those data security protocols, all of that. Secondly, maybe use something as a compliance as a service sort of a solution, where you provide tools, software tools or tech tools or whatever it is, for them to be able to automate these processes across the different countries. So it's very simple. It is very simple, but of course when you put it into practice, there's a lot of work that's involved. But in a sense, that's how a business could monetize the problem that we have right now.
Yeah, and just by looking at the Sri Lankan context, I think we need to communicate where in Sri Lankan SME sector, the female empowerment can be considered as one of the very important aspect. Where in our country, around 35% of the female engagement in the labor force. But one of the Bangladesh provision he mentioned, if Bangladesh can increase the female participation for the labor force by 10%, Bangladesh can increase their GDP by 1%. That might be one of the reasons in this panel also we have 2 female representation. So we have to have that representation with due respect for the female. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Oshadee, I think we are talking about there are certain changes in Sri Lanka in terms of political and social landscape. So how far law regulations of the country should support exporter to be successful in international market, and what might be the role of the government?
Okay. So I think my perspective on this is, law and regulation is a two-way process. People must obey it and accept it and adapt to it, and the government must has the guts and the knowledge to apply correct thing according to the cultural value, their people perspective, their resources and everything. So what happened in Sri Lanka for the last, I think, so many years, we had processes, we had government, but there was an issue with how it applying it, how it goes to the ground level, how really people will go for it. We always had the thing, if politicians doing whatever they want, why we must ask what they are asking us to do, because every day in news we are not seeing good things in Sri Lanka. So for my understanding on these particular questions, actually government must be the primary place or the person who must introduce laws and take the ownership of it and take the monitor it and implement it and make sure everyone in the country, every citizens following it. So I think in certain areas, especially first thing in Sri Lanka, I think we need to have a proper education system. Government must take the initiative of it. Government must go to the ground level. We have a proper structure. Every citizen must know about the law and what is really, what is there, I would say that it's not enough to have a literacy. We call it always, you should have financial literacy now, IT literacy. When it's come to law, that is very important, right? Not only the signing a thing will give you entire freedom. Then the second thing, this when it's come to internationally, we have a lot of diplomatic missions. Our lot of diplomatics are outside of the country. They are doing a lot of diplomatic missions. But I think the main priority of diplomatics is to link Sri Lanka with international bodies, with international parties, government, bilateral agreement, all these things like a free trade agreement. Now I know we are having a lot of agreement with Bangladesh, Pakistan, India. How much we get our SMEs, how much benefits we are getting. We have a lot of agreement with Asian Development Bank, IMF, how much we are getting from loan schemes to the easy access to the international market. I think these are the things government must come forward and do more activities and everything. So this is my thing. I think government must take the lead of it, go to the ground, take the education up, then especially go and make a lot of agreement with international parties, especially when it's come to law and agreement, then all these tax financial issues, that's where I think government can play a huge role to facilitate SMEs and scaling them up.
Yeah, thank you very much. Even in the international conferences, we have seen whatever the conferences conduct like this, where the government members also come in, government like officers and all, they are coming and getting certain very important notes and all for policy changes and all. Even I think you discussed about one of the very important thing, the financial literacy and all. Oshadee can have a kind of a different operationalization, international economic law literacy. sort of a thing. It's kind of awareness we need to have for the people in the country with a different perspective. Thank you very much for all the presenters. Unfortunately, I could not ask the second question because here they say the time for the Q&A. Right? So we'll go for a Q&A. Any questions? Yes, please.
One paper which may be relevant to the government, and this is one of the needs of the people of this country, and develop at least 2-page document and give it to government. That would be very much useful, and they are also struggling to address national issues, especially right now the government is, I'm not representing government, sorry, right now they are going to create an entrepreneurs based culture. And also this panel highlighted the responsibility of the university. I as the Dean of the Faculty and also along with Professor Sanath, we can start short course to cater to the industrial needs. So that is also, thank you for the conference organizers, creating a space in which this need is highlighted. So that's the second point. And the third point I would like to ask from you all is, in the news, daily news, we see SME industry, some of the key people have organized and they have started associations. Aren't they presenting their viewpoints to the government? As they appear in the media, of course, they are talking very critically and they must be presenting it to the government as that's the question I want your explanation. Other 2 points I want conference organizers to consider. First point. Second point, I myself as Dean and also along with Professor Sanath, we can start short courses. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Anton. I think that is really important. And for the question, any panel members can answer. Unfortunately, there are certain things like voice there from the media, but it has been not properly articulated. So these are the concerns. Thank you very much. And even by looking at the insight and all, what to suggest with the HSS and management, we can have a different collaboration with the help of the law department and all. Thanks for that. Any other questions from the audience?
I just wanted to follow up. It's less a question and a comment, but first of all, just to say thank you. But, for what CTIL and James have created, actually where it started was through outside funding from UNCTAD. And so you might want to think about tapping into the Asian Development Bank or UNCTAD to provide initial funding. But of course, what happens often is that funding dies out and everything ends. But what was unique was that the Indian government then tied it to the Department of Commerce, semi-independent, but working directly with the government because it was a very successful program, and here we are today.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Yes, please.
So, answer to the questions you had initially, Professor. Now, there are many alliances in Sri Lanka because I am representing tourism industry as well. So, we are a registered travel agency in Sri Lanka. So, some time back with this minimum rate policy brought it by the government, and there are visa issue because suddenly over the night entire visa process given to someone else while everyone enjoying free of charge visa access to Sri Lanka. So with regarding these issues, all the time, different industries, they are coming together and they are, putting much of their effort. But again, one thing comes at, the thing, as SMEs, these small association again is small, right? Then one time they has to come and, fight with the government. So we have to put lot of fundings to sometime, in the court. In those cases, without having a proper legal backup, right? Sometimes they also reluctant to go and, sometimes raise their issues. Indirectly sometime, if you are a SME and you go again and raise your voice, in return that will become a boomerang and somewhere else you will, without knowing, you will get punished. So due to these issues, sometimes SME's voice is not that much highlighted and visible. Always big people, big players come to the front and solve their issues, while most of the SME's issues always bury in the ground.
this is such an incredibly important convening, and I appreciate this panel so much. I do want to elevate the importance of the gender gap and women's participation in economic growth and participation. Studies show that it's been limited in Sri Lanka, and I think that that's wrong because women do participate in the economy. It's just that their labor is invisible. And they do the kind of work that's not quantified. And they do the kind of work that is not qualified in that people don't come and talk to women about the labor that they do. So I think an important intervention as one goes forward is truly thinking about how does one lift up women's labor, recognize women's labor, see women's labor as important to the domestic economy, to an international economy. And I'm really impressed by the women students that I've seen participate, the guys too. I was very impressed by you all as well. But I think it says a lot about the pathways forward when we see women taking the stage as well. So thank you all so much.
Thank you very much for that comment. So the time has come for us to conclude the session. Thank you very much for all. And more importantly, now we have refreshment and lunch. Thank you.
Let us make a moment to express our deep gratitude to our esteemed panelists for sharing their valuable knowledge and expertise. These tokens represent our heartfelt thanks for your time, effort, and dedication in making this discussion such a success. So let me kindly invite Professor Nalin Abesekara to distribute the token of appreciation. First, I would like to invite Mr. Oshadee Withanawasam. Mr. Harinda Mahakumara. Mr. Nilantha Kumara. Miss Amira Ghafoor. Miss Abitharani Jeyachandran. Now it's my honor to present the token of appreciation to esteemed Chair, Professor Nalin Abesekara.